Justice is blind, guilt sees everything. At least that's the tagline for the movie that we're going to be taking a look at today. Clint Eastwood's Juror number 2, finally available for streaming on Max. If you're a fan of legal dramas that make you question morals and morality, then this is the film for you. I'm Brennan Sem for the New Wave Nerds. Subscribe down below for more nerd content and commentary. Now let's roll the intro. Juror number 2 follows a family man who, while serving as a juror on a high-profile murder case, finds himself struggling with a serious moral dilemma, one that he could use to sway the jury verdict and potentially convict or free the wrong killer. Juror number 2 is directed by Clint Eastwood and stars Nicholas Hoult, Toni Collette, J.K. Simmons, and Kiefer Sutherland. So, non-spoiler review, Juror number 2 is easily one of the best movies that I've seen this year. I don't know if I would go so far as some of the news media would in saying that it is the best movie of the year, but without a doubt, it is one of the best. Now, full disclosure, I am a little bit biased here. Anything that is a legal drama or a legal thriller automatically gets extra points to me. That entire genre, that entire premise is incredibly interesting to me. For a long while, I wanted to be a lawyer. One of my favorite movies of all time is 12 Angry Men with Henry Fonda. And this extends even into like the superhero stuff, right? One of my favorite aspects, and I've talked about this on some of our previous episodes, one of my favorite aspects of season 2 of Daredevil is the courtroom drama stuff with Frank Castle and Matt Murdock. I think it's just supremely interesting to me. I don't know, it's something about it just clicks in my brain, so I'm a little biased. But even without that, I think that this movie is absolutely tremendous. The performances from Nicholas Hoult, Toni Collette, and even J.K. Simmons, who's only in the movie for a short time, are absolutely amazing. Not to mention a surprise performance from a comedy actor that I'll get to very briefly here. But outside of that, the cinematography, the writing, the direction, all around makes this one of the best movies that I've seen in the entire year. Now, like I said, Nicholas Hoult gives an absolutely amazing performance here. Right from the outset of the beginning, the film does such an amazing job of casting him as the all-American dad. It is a lovely family. The relationship that he has with his wife, played by Zoe Deutch, is incredibly loving. It makes you feel for Nicholas Hoult every step along the way. Throughout this entire moral dilemma, as it's described in the synopsis here, you feel for you feel for Nicholas Hoult. You understand his thought process. You understand why he's doing the things that he does. It really does an incredible job of putting you in his shoes. But even further than that, the film does such a great job of showing that the world is not necessarily black and white. You understand and you sympathize with Nicholas Hoult, and you also sympathize with Toni Collette, who plays Faith Killebrew. She is the prosecuting attorney in this. She's on the campaign to be district attorney, and you understand why she does the things that she does as well. You understand where she is coming from. So to get a little further into the story here, the main impetus, the high-profile murder case, follows a man played by Gabriel Basso, and his name, James Michael Scythe. That's the character's name. So in this, James Michael Scythe has been put on trial, and he is suspected of murdering his girlfriend. They had an altercation, a relatively public altercation at a bar late at night in the midst of a storm, and after which the girlfriend wanders down the street and, again, late at night in the middle of the rain, she wanders down the street and she is found the next morning or the morning after dead in a creek bed. And naturally, as is the case in almost any situation, you always go with the boyfriend first, and the evidence would appear to be pretty heavily against James Michael Scythe here. And Toni Collette, again, her name in the show is Faith Killebrew. She's running for DA, and she is running on this platform of, I'm going to make our city safe. I am going to make it a place that is safe for women. Crimes against women are not allowed here. You know, people have to know that you cannot get away with this, which of course is a platform that everybody respects and understands and agrees with. And so she is single-mindedly pursuing this case. The defense attorney, I think he's a public defender. I'm fairly certain he's a public defender. Obviously is saying that the alleged murderer, the defendant, I don't know why that word was hard to remember, why the defendant, he's claiming that he's innocent and saying it with such passion and such conviction, which is maybe maybe not quite the best word to use here given the circumstances, but he's saying it with such conviction that his client is innocent, and not saying it in a way where it's just, typical public defender, defense attorney, where it's like, yeah, you don't have anything. He's saying, if you talk to this man, you will see in his eyes that he is innocent. And the interplay between these two attorneys is just absolutely amazing. And Toni Collette just does such a wonderful job of playing this DA, of attempting to ascertain the truth, of sticking to her guns according to the facts as they have them, right? And eventually, adjusting and growing as a character as more evidence comes to light. It is so incredibly, incredibly well done. And I have to say, I'm not very familiar with Toni Collette. I know that she has done quite a few things. I didn't realize until just now that she was in The Sixth Sense, which I've obviously seen, but I couldn't pick her. I would not have. Is this the mother in this? I'm trying to quickly. Yes, it is the mother in this. I don't remember her role really at all in this movie. And so because of that, like I said, I'm not very familiar with her, and so I wasn't expecting anything necessarily amazing, right? I've also seen her in Knives Out. So there is a decent amount of things in which she's been that I have seen, but the only thing that came to mind was Hereditary, and her role in that, it was well done. I thought she did a great job, but it was not. It's obviously a very different caliber and style of movie here, but she absolutely knocked it out of the park. In the supporting role, we also have J.K. Simmons, who longtime listeners of the show will know I'm a huge fan of. I just think he's amazing. I wish he had a bigger role in this. But the role that he did play, he's Harold, one of the jurors and a former cop. He's just so fun. In any scene that he's in, I'm like, yeah, this guy knows what he's talking about. This is a man who's seen the world and knows things. He commands that respect, and I just am a huge fan of him. In anything, but here it was just great. Like I said, I wish we could have seen more of him, but it is what it is. Now, as I mentioned, there was one performance that very, very heavily surprised me, and that's from Cedric Yarbo, I believe. I would assume it's Yarbo and not Yarboff, but this is a man who's traditionally a comedy actor, right? It's a guy who I had no idea what his name was until I looked up for the credits for this. But he has a face that he's been in a lot of things. Like I said, he's traditionally a comedy actor. And so seeing him in this, I was very surprised. But he did so amazing. He is one of the jurors, and he is, very, very heavily opposed, or he's rather very heavily for conviction of James Michael Scythe. And, in the beginning, it's like you sort of don't really understand what's going on here. You sort of don't really understand why Did I say Yarbo? I think it might be Yarbro. In any case, you don't necessarily really understand why he is so heavily against James Michael Scythe. And then as we progress further and further, you realize that there is a history here, not with the character in and of itself, but an indirect connection to James Michael Scythe and his past. And so that's why he is incredibly strong in his conviction and belief that the man needs to be convicted. See, there, the use of conviction definitely makes more sense than when we're talking about the public defender. But in any case, the performance was so well delivered in a way that, like I said, I just completely did not expect it. I really do want to see him do more, more drama roles. I want to see him do more serious acting. It was absolutely incredible. Now, one thing I will say about this movie is that while it is beautifully shot, I think it is very well done. It's sort of in a style that, like, in a lot of cases, I don't really like. Like, for instance, the opening shot of the movie is a zoom, and as, again, longtime listeners of the show will know that I'm not a big fan of the zoom. It's very unnatural to me. It's unnatural to the eye. It doesn't never mind. I'm not going to say that. But so in a lot of cases, I think it's very beautifully shot, but there are some things that I don't necessarily like. But overall, I would say it's a very, very beautiful, beautiful movie. I wouldn't say cinematography wise, I wouldn't say it's one of my top picks of the year, but it definitely surprised me, and I was definitely excited for it. And it's made me interested in seeing some further Clint Eastwood movies. And what better time to do so than to take a look at some of his movies when this may be the very last. There's some poetic irony maybe there. I'm not sure. But in any case, we'll be back to talk a little bit more about spoilers and the story after a brief word from our sponsors. These days, it's hard to know what's worth watching in the little free time you have at the end of the day.
We know you work hard and don't want to spend hours searching for the perfect movie.
So make things easier on yourself.
Let us do the looking for you.
Take a break from work and experience cinema.
Then come back and see if we like the movie as much as you.
With the New Wave Nerds, you can spend less time looking and more time watching and enjoying your day off.
Subscribe today.
And we're back. Okay, and now, as I said, we are going to discuss a little bit more in depth the story here. So this is your final warning for spoilers. Again, the movie's available on Max. Give it a watch if you haven't yet, and then come back and see the rest of the review to hear my thoughts on the story. I believe that's long enough, so let's get into it. Now, as we said in the beginning, Nicholas Hoult plays this family man who is struggling with this serious moral dilemma, right? And the moral dilemma is the fact that he himself is actually involved directly in the case here. Like, as I mentioned earlier, before the event in question takes place at this bar late at night, and throughout the course of the movie, I think this part's actually revealed really early on, we learn that Nicholas Hoult was at the bar in question on the night of the incident. We find out that he left the bar shortly after the confrontation between James Michael Scythe and his girlfriend, and we learn that it may very well have been, and in fact very likely was, Nicholas Hoult who inadvertently caused the death of this young girl. And so now he's going throughout this trial, trying to ascertain the truth, and has this knowledge that he is implicated. And had the police done their due diligence, perhaps they would have come to the same conclusion that he has as well. And so now he has to struggle throughout this entire trial of, what do I do and how do I do it? So at the end of the trial, So the entirety of this movie mostly takes place in deliberation, right? We have some, so we see some bits of the trial, but the majority of it is in deliberation. And the jury, all 11 of them, apart from Nicholas Hoult, they all want to convict immediately. They believe James Michael Scythe, he is more than likely the person, he is beyond a reasonable doubt the person who has killed the young girl. And Nicholas Hoult holds out and he says, well, are we absolutely certain of that? Because obviously he knows that it wasn't him, or at least if he doesn't know, he has a reasonable doubt that it wasn't James Michael Scythe who murdered the young girl. And there is reasonable doubt, and there's a reasonableness to the belief that he actually caused it, right? And so he is holding out, and he's trying to convince the rest of the jury. These other jurors was the phrase I was trying to say. He's trying to convince them that it is not 100% clear that this man killed this girl. And so throughout the course of the movie, Nicholas Hoult sort of goes through his own, again, moral dilemma. We learn more and more about him throughout this. We learn that he is actually a recovering alcoholic, and the reason that he was at the bar is because he was having, it was a difficult day. I'm not sure. Yeah, I guess I'll say what it is. It's very difficult. It's a difficult topic, but it is the anniversary of the date of what would have been the birth of his child had the mother not miscarried. And so he's a recovering alcoholic. He goes to the bar and he doesn't drink. So, massive props to this man. Massive, massive props. I mean, the amount of willpower to not do that is incredible. So he goes to the bar, he orders the drink, and he just stares at it for a while. And eventually he decides to leave. And so with all this information in mind, and with the belief that it was actually potentially him who caused the death of this girl, he goes to, I'm not 100% clear on the terminology here, but he goes to Kiefer Sutherland, who is like the leader of the AA support group. I don't know if that would technically be his sponsor or if like another person would be that. I'm not 100% clear on the intricacies of how it works. But in any case, he goes to Kiefer Sutherland, who coincidentally is a lawyer himself. And he, they go through and he's like, hey, I need to talk to you about something. And they do this thing, which they do they do often in like TV shows and movies, where the lawyer says, "Okay, give me $1. Now we have, confidentiality." I don't actually think that's how it works. I'm not 100% certain on this, but I believe that I actually watched a video of a lawyer discussing that that's not quite how it works. It's not so simple as give me $1 and we'll have confidentiality. Pretty sure there are more steps to it, but it's a movie, whatever. In any case, Kiefer Sutherland goes over the information, goes over the facts as Nicholas Hoult tells him, and he says, "Look, buddy, this is a bad situation for you here. Even though, you didn't drink," and I think he even says, "I trust you," or something like that. But he says, it doesn't matter that you didn't drink. It's way too far to actually, it was too long in the past. It was an entire year ago. So there's no way to test if you had drank. And so any reasonable jury would assume that you did drink, in that you are lying now. And given your history, you're going to get, the heaviest sentence. I can't remember what the actual charge would be. It's not going to come back to me. But the point of it is that Kiefer Sutherland says, you're looking at 30 years to life while your daughter is, or while your wife is actively pregnant and expected to go into labor anytime soon, or anytime now. And so they're discussing the trial more and more. I think this is in a later scene where this happens, but they're discussing the trial, and Nicholas Hoult, they're discussing what's going on, and Kiefer Sutherland says, look, a high-profile case like this, there needs to be a verdict. It needs to be guilty or not guilty. If there is a mistrial, if there is a hung jury, then they are just going to try the case again. And if that happens, then any other, group of 12 people are going to vote to convict James Michael Scythe because all of the evidence points to him. And so Nicholas Hoult is dealing with this where he is struggling, right? Do I send this innocent man to prison? Do I try to convince the rest of the jury, which as the movie plays out becomes less and less of a likely possibility, because at least one of the jurors, the gentleman played by Cedric Yarbrough, is adamant because of the gang affiliations of James Michael Scythe. He absolutely refuses to vote not guilty, regardless of the facts, which not a good look for a jury. But it's the legal system. What are you gonna do? I mean, during voir dire, what am I trying to say? Counsel. Nobody asked if there was any relations between any. No, how am I? I'm bumbling over my words here. But during voir dire, neither of the attorneys, either the prosecuting attorney or the defense attorney, asked about any past relationships or any past events between any of the jurors and the gang with which James Michael Scythe was previously affiliated. That was a very long sentence, and it was terribly delivered. For some reason, I couldn't figure out the words to make that easier to say. But in any case, I hope you understood what I said. If not, it's a moot point. You get the gist of it. Cedric did not want to vote not guilty. He absolutely refused. And so because of this, Nicholas Hoult is dealing with this trouble. And throughout the course of the movie, Toni Collette slowly starts to question the guilt of James Michael Scythe. She begins to believe that perhaps there's more here than meets the eye. And the ending of the film is really interesting. I really liked it. I have seen some things on the internet of people who are definitely not a fan of it, but I very much enjoyed the ambiguity of the end. So, and this is obviously the heavy spoiler section, because it's the literal ending of the film. But eventually, Nicholas Hoult comes to the decision that he must vote guilty. And so he condemns this innocent man to what is decided as life in prison. That's the sentence that he's given. And it seems like even though he comes to the sentencing, even though he harbors guilt, it seems like all of that fades away when he goes home and is with his family, right? His wife gives birth to their daughter. Is it a daughter? Yes, it's a daughter. I'm fairly certain of that. The wife gives birth, and in the scenes we see of the family, it seems like it's all worth it in his mind. It seems like it's all worth it. And then the final scene of the movie, there's a knock at the door. Nicholas Hoult goes to answer it, and it's Toni Collette. It's Faith Killebrew, who has just been elected as the DA for the city. And I don't even think they say any words. I think they open the door and then the movie ends. So you're just left to wonder, to question, what plays out here? What happens next? Is Toni Collette coming to Nicholas Hoult's house to say that she is going to be coming after him? Or does she come to him to say, it's over? It's done. I know what happened, but it's over. We need to move on. I don't believe that that's what happened. It is pretty, the ending is definitely left open-ended. There is definitely ambiguity in there. But I think throughout the course of watching the movie, if you see the trajectory that Toni Collette takes, if you watch and pay attention to the way that she views the world and how she acts, I find it hard to believe that she would have let Nicholas Hoult get away with this. I find it hard to believe that. Now, it's obviously, there's the potential that it's there. Like I said, there's inherent ambiguity, so you're left to question. But I think it just seems not in keeping with the character of Killebrew if she lets Nicholas Hoult get away. She doesn't seem like the kind of person to me who would knowingly let James Michael Scythe rot in prison for his whole life if she knew that he was innocent. But I don't know. Why don't you guys let me know down in the comments what you guys thought of Faith Killebrew's decision here? What do you think she did? Let me know what you thought of the final, or what will potentially be the final movie from Clint Eastwood, one of the great directors. Let me know. I definitely thought that this movie was amazing. Like I said, throughout the entire thing, I was heavily invested in the movie, and I am infinitely more interested now than I ever was before to see some of Clint Eastwood's other movies, to see some of the other works that he's directed. I am much more interested than I have ever been, and I think that's the hallmark of a great movie. And it is also a little bit poetic that what would potentially be his last movie will be the one that gets me interested much more in his career. But let me know down below. In any case, we'll be back here with another episode. Make sure that you subscribe for more content and turn on the notifications so that you never miss another episode. And I will see you guys then.